Gorgeous. Welcome to the Bernadette Jackson Podcast, where we are redefining how the world views women with daddy issues by discussing topics, sharing stories, and gaining insights, all from the perspective of a fatherless daughter. I'm your host, Bernadette, the creator of Her Way Relationship Intensive and your favorite fear investigator. If this is your first time here, here's what I want you to know. The fear of abandonment and rejection is the lens through which fatherless daughters do most things. It informs how they show up in every relationship. Most fatherless daughters are operating in the fear of abandonment cycle and they don't even know it. Each week, I focus on a topic that highlights how fear shows up in our lives, either through conversations with others or deep dives into the insights that I have. If you'd like to know if you're on the fear of abandonment cycle, go to BernadetteJackson.com/FOA cycle and take my free assessment. Again, that's BernadetteJackson.com/FOA cycle. Hey, y'all. Welcome to season 3 of the Bernadette Jackson Podcast. I am excited. I spent the entire month of June coming up with all new content, interviewing men for my new series of fathers with daughters. And this season is going to be special because we have a theme that we're going to be talking about all season long. All of my solo episodes will be centered around the what and the how of crafting your relationship recipe. The reason I've chosen this theme is because fear of abandonment and rejection often keeps us from experiencing the amazing relationships that we deserve. And I do not want that for us anymore. Now, if you've been rocking with me from the very beginning, then you know that I used to be a chef and I used to own a vegan catering company. It comes so naturally to me to use a food analogy to illustrate a concept that I want you guys to understand. So with that said, I view relationships the same way I view recipes. Recipes are all unique, but they have 3 things in common. They have a flavor profile, quality ingredients, and step-by-step instructions. And like recipes, amazing relationships also have very unique qualifications, but they have 3 things in common. The flavor profile, which is our needs, our desires, and our preferences. The quality ingredients, which are the 2 authentic people coming together who have the capacity to meet the other person's needs and who want to create a safe space for the relationship to flourish in. And lastly, it's the step-by-step instructions. This is how we treat ourselves and ultimately how we teach others to treat us. My solo episodes will always point back to one of the 3 components needed to crafting your relationship recipe, and today is no different. I distinctly remember a session I had with one of my clients where she asked me, will she ever not be triggered by the loss of her father? And it brought up a larger conversation about how our trauma affects us in ways that we don't even realize. So fast forward to a couple of weeks ago, where Will Smith and Kevin Hart sat down for a Father's edition of the Red Table Talk, and Will introduced a term that I feel is the perfect explanation for the conversation that I had with my client. And that is the concept of emotional bacteria. Now, you're not going to find the definition for emotional bacteria anywhere because Will made it up. Sidebar, I absolutely love it when people come up with terms that they use to describe the effects of their life experiences, because it tells me that they have done the deep work to understand and process what has happened to them so that they can grow from it. So I decided to take a crack at defining the term, and here's what I came up with. Emotional bacteria is the residue of the feelings, behaviors, and thoughts associated with the unprocessed trauma and adversity you have experienced. I'm going to say that again. Emotional bacteria is the residue of the feelings, behaviors, and thoughts associated with the unprocessed trauma and adversity you have experienced. When we think about everything that we learned about bacteria in science, a few things come to mind. Bacteria is microscopic. It's everywhere and on everything. It can either make you sick or it can build up your defenses, and it has unique characteristics that other organisms do not share. So when we are thinking about the emotional bacteria that develops in us and on us from the trauma of our father loss, what comes to mind for me is all of the effects I see women experience that they do not realize are due to their fatherlessness. A part of the work that I do with clients is connecting these dots so that they can see what I see. Like regular bacteria, emotional bacteria has 5 characteristics, and the first one is size. They are too small to be seen by the naked eye. You have lived with these feelings, behaviors, and thoughts so long that they become invisible to you. Much like bacteria, you have to take out your microscope of intentionality to see what has been there all along. One example I see a lot with my clients is the idea that they cannot trust anyone enough to ask for the help that they need. Fatherless daughters do not often have their emotions validated, and they were missing significant support due to the absence of their father. This has made that woman very independent and self-reliant. However, the emotional bacteria that's left behind is her distrust of the people around her to offer their support when she most needs it. Then we have the cell wall. This is the second characteristic. It is the protective layer that keeps the emotional bacteria safe. These are the coping and defense mechanisms that you develop to distract yourself from dealing with the trauma. It's the walls that you put up around yourself so that people don't get close enough to see or touch the tenderness that trauma causes. I've seen this portrayed on both sides of the spectrum, where to protect themselves from the possibility of rejection, women develop a superiority complex or they become self-deprecating. When they develop a superiority complex, they believe that if they present themselves to be far superior to anyone around them, no one will dare to believe that they crave validation or connection. On the other side of that spectrum are women who are so insecure that they cannot accept that anyone sees their value. They are suspicious of people wanting to connect with them while secretly yearning for that closeness. Both sets of women develop their defense mechanisms to protect themselves from further harm. Both sets of women want to feel loved, they want to belong, and they want to be validated. In both scenarios, the women's emotional bacteria is preventing the very thing that they most want to have. Before we get into the remaining characteristics, here is a quick commercial break. Before we get back into this week's goodness, I want to invite you to join my private Facebook community, H.E.R Coalition. I make it my business to create safe spaces for fatherless daughters to learn, grow, and heal, and H.E.R Coalition does just that. We go deeper into conversations about the things that we discuss here on the podcast. I teach a new topic weekly, we share stories, and we just support and love each other. It's a space I wish I had growing up when I was clueless about how my fatherlessness affected me and yearning for a deeper connection. But I was just too paralyzed with the fear of rejection. Healing happens in community with like-minded and like-hearted people, and I would love to be in community with you. So join H.E.R Coalition at BernadetteJackson.com/community. The ladies of H.E.R Coalition get to choose the topic of weekly discussions, they get exclusive access to events, and first dibs on all that my brand has to offer. So again, join me in H.E.R Coalition at BernadetteJackson.com/community. All right, I'm back. And with the third characteristic, I want to talk to you guys about flagella. Flagella is the tail that helps bacteria move forward. With emotional bacteria, this is the fear-based responses developed as a result of the trauma you've experienced. They affect how you show up in relationships, and they affect the people around you. This characteristic of emotional bacteria is one I know personally, and I see time and time again with the women I serve. One classic example of this is the notion that your value needs to be proved or earned. As a result of this, women will often abandon their needs and desires in favor of overextending themselves to others, pouring from an empty cup into everyone around them, wondering why they are miserable and unfulfilled. The next characteristic of emotional bacteria is that they can thrive in a variety of environments. Given the right environment, bacteria grows exponentially. The same is true for emotional bacteria. If you continue to stay in toxic relationships, if you continue to isolate yourself, if you continue to engage with emotionally unavailable people, the emotional bacteria that develops in those environments will continue to grow. And the last characteristic is that they are everywhere. Emotional bacteria, like regular bacteria, are all around us. We will always have the memories of our experiences, both good and bad. There will always be something that triggers you, whether it's a smell, a place that you go to, a phrase that you've heard, a song that you listen to on the radio. But the great news is that when you decide to become intentional about healing the trauma that you've experienced, the amount of emotional bacteria in your life is dramatically reduced. You will not get rid of it. However, you can build up a healthy immune system to combat it. And building a healthy emotional immune system looks like exercises in introspection, like journaling, affirmations, and meditation. It looks like prayer and therapy, both the faith and the works. It looks like getting into community with supportive people, because healing does not happen in isolation. And it looks like self-development and self-nurturing, because you cannot expect others to do for you what you refuse to do for yourself. I want to leave you with one question to consider. What emotional bacteria have you become accustomed to living with, and what is one thing that you can commit to doing about it today? I want to thank you so much for joining me in today's episode of the Bernadette Jackson Podcast. You can download my freebie. It is bernadettejackson.com/FOA cycle. And we also have a new one at bernadettejackson.com/freebie. That one you will find the 10 ways your daddy issues are affecting your relationships. And I want you to remember that you deserve amazing relationships. So start with the relationship that you have with yourself. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.